Kayak drops us in the middle of the water with Annie and doesn't let us look away. Today we're talking with director Briana O'Neal and actor Diane Hill of Theater Nova's production of Jordan Hall's play. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for
Oh,
having us.
yes, thank you.
So this seems like such an incredible play, but I also didn't know much about it. So Diane, I kind of was wondering, can you tell us what's going on in Kayak?
Oh, yeah, sure. At the beginning, the audience will see me in a kayak, and at the end, they will see me in a kayak. So, what's happened is somehow, and I'm not going to disclose too much, but somehow I'm stranded on the Credit River. And what we do in the hour and 5 minutes that the show is we have a lot of flashbacks with my son and his girlfriend that I really, really don't like. And that sort of lead into how we got to where I am stranded in a kayak on the Credit River.
It sounds like that's like a hugely impactful story.
It's very impactful from many sides because, first of all, there's the family relationship. Then there's the boyfriend girlfriend relationship where the mother is very protective of her son. And the girlfriend, the reason the mother, Diane, playing Annie Iverson, doesn't love the girlfriend so much is because she is a political activist. And my character is very worried that she, Julie, will bring my son into dangerous situations. And in the end, that is what does happen.
So Brianna, what drew you to wanting to direct this story?
I have loved this script for a long time. I read it for the first time in college, and one of our other artistic directors, Shelby, had also read it. So we'd connected over the script and finally got the opportunity to do it. But I think, well, it's one of the older scripts that we've done still within the last, this century. But the script was initially written in 2010. And I think the fact that it is still so relevant in terms of its political topics and its climate topics is really the thing that made us want to do it right now. Because even though the script was written a little bit ago, there you couldn't tell, honestly. The fact that we're still where we are politically and as when we talk about the environment and the climate, which is very impactful in this show, it's so relevant. So I think it was really the perfect time to do this play right now and kind of make that point and push, that agenda a little bit of that the actions that we take and don't take now are going to be the things that end up affecting us in 5, 10, 15 years. So now's the time to do something about it. And I think storytelling is one of the best ways that we can do that and share that message.
And like you said, this is something that it's not changing. Like we're still these are topics that we still need to care about because the world is just as chaotic.
Mhm.
And what's so interesting, Brian, is that last weekend, we were all still in the throes of a very big winter storm. And we all have family in different parts of the country that are feeling stuff that they had never felt before. And I think that our audience in the first weekend, Brianna, don't you think were affected by this, by the theme of climate change even more because of where we all are right now with our weather?
Yeah, I think the fact that we have seen these historic storms in the past few years, especially this winter storm, we've seen increasing hurricanes and like the signs are there. And I think audiences really connected with that, with it being so relevant right in that moment of people, without power, people stranded because they hadn't experienced this kind of weather before. And it just keeps ramping up. And when do we start really paying attention to it?
It really adds to the weight of the show and why I feel so relevant right now is because we're living through changes like that
Mhm.
every day. Um, so with a show like this, with a character like this, I should say, Diane, what is your process of kind of developing a character such as Annie? Especially as you're kind of going through a narrative as you're bringing it to the stage. How do you do that?
Uh, well, first of all, there's a lot of humor in the play, and it's my favorite thing of all about acting is making people laugh, and it is surprisingly funny. And I think it's because it's the normal, everyday the the person who shows their flaws a little bit in how they how they feel about like my son's girlfriend and stuff. Um, so when I first read it, I just really liked the script, just like Bree. And then when I started to study it more, I started to see various people from my life in Annie. Um, like there's one line, hope the person I'm thinking of doesn't watch this. But there's one line where my son says to me, "You know she's good, right?" And my character says, "Of course she's good. Everybody's good." And it reminded me of the time, it reminded me of during Black Lives Matter when someone actually said to me, "I think everybody's lives matter." And so there are little parts in it that um, help me develop a character. This is not me on stage at all.
Sure.
So
It's cool that you can have those little nuggets of your real life to pull from to
for
bring
sure,
this
for
character
sure.
to life.
And we know people like this. And so and a lot of them are on social media. So we can
Absolutely.
learn from that.
So, Brianna, how do you feel like this show balances that comedy that we're kind of talking about, but also some discomfort? Because there's as you're talking about these topics, they tend to be maybe uncomfortable to have those conversations sometimes.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the challenges with this script and putting the show together was how we find where those two things kind of intersect. And I think the moments that we found have been in the truth of the matter. The humor lies in how honest the show is, and then just confronting that discomfort and being willing to say, hey, here's what it is. We're not going to sugarcoat it. We're not going to do any of that. It just is the truth of the matter. And I think balancing all of that honesty is how we found the humor. It's how we found the love in the show. And it's how we found the message of the show. Um, because it is where we are. And we're also in the place where the one thing I never wanted to do with the show is have the message be the sense of despair, because I don't think that that's realistic to where we are, and I think it doesn't get us anywhere. So we wanted to make sure it felt like there was hope, that there's something we can do for these characters, for their lives, but also when we take it to our lives as an audience, is there's something we can do about all of these things, and there are actions we can take, but we can't take them if we're not honest about them. So we're just confronting it directly, and I think that's how we managed to thread the line through.
And Diane, for you, what is that kind of like then to feel that balance between the comedy that you mentioned and that discomfort as you're in the role?
Yeah. It's not my problem. Basically.
Okay.
I just do what I'm doing, and my character does, and me as an actor, I don't worry about that. That's Bree's job. And there were
Okay.
some times when Bree would say, that could be a little bit touchy for people, so let's pull back on that a little bit. And that worked for me as well too. Just soften it a little bit, maybe not make a big deal about that thing because that could trigger someone. Bree's very sensitive. W- Yeah, Bree's very good at what she does.
Thank you.
It sounds like you need somebody like Brianna to really take a story like this and do it with care and kindness.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what do you hope that audience feel for Annie by the end of the play? So like with the struggles that we're having, between her like duties to the world but also to her son, like what are you hoping that they feel for her?
Well, let me just tell you that on opening night, we had a whole bunch of early 20 males in the audience, and they were crying, and they were crying for Annie. It turns out,
Okay.
for my character, not for their friend who plays my son. They were very caught up in it, and I was thinking yesterday that I think this play actually hits younger people even more than some of our older subscribers, because I think that the young people know seriously that this is going to affect them, maybe even within the next 10 years
Yeah.
more than some of us who have been around for a longer period of time. What they're going to feel for Annie is my feelings for my son, and hopefully that I didn't do things out of malice, that I did things out of wanting to protect my son. I maybe was a little bit too pushy with making him make choices in his life. But it was all because I love him so much. And so I've had audience members who are mothers come up to me and say, I'm a mother. I felt everything so much I could hardly breathe. So I think that they will not like dislike me because I was sort of making fun of some of the things that the political activist is doing, but that they will understand why I did what I did that led to where I ended up.
Bree, how about for you?
I think Annie is surprisingly relatable. And
Okay.
that's something we had to kind of decide early on in the process is Annie can't be a villain in this.
Mhm.
I don't think there is a villain in this story except for maybe inaction. Um, but for all of them, they all have this core of what they want. And I think especially for Annie, even when she does say these things that maybe make the younger of us roll our eyes a little bit, there's something that is so, I think, admirable about her that she does have this love for her son, and it is her primary thing. And while you sometimes want to shake her and just say, wake up, look around you, there's bigger things, there are bigger things around, it still all comes down to the fact that she loves her son so much that it's all she can see. And I think for all of our audiences, hopefully, that they can see that side of it. But I think Annie is more relatable than it would seem on the surface, you know?
And she
Sure,
comes
because
around in the end too.
She does.
She learns. She's not someone who doesn't eventually get it.
which is key to like having a sympathetic character, you know, and you don't want them to just be like. It sounds like she grows by the end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, Bree, with this show, you know, in the name, it's a kayak. So, how do you approach the physical reality of the kayak in the water for staging?
Yeah, that was definitely a challenge going into it is she's in the kayak the whole show and it's right there. So I think the first thing that I really requested from our set designer and our production team is that we not let the audience escape from it,
Okay.
that we should be right in there with Annie. You know, while the audience isn't sitting in kayaks, I wanted it to feel as present as possible. And in our space, which is a smaller, more intimate space, you really get that sense. I mean, there's somebody probably sitting 4 feet from where Diane is in the kayak.
Oh,
So you
wow.
do feel like you are in it with her. Um, our set designer, Craig Hain, came up with this beautiful idea for using fabric as sort of our water. So there
Oh, okay.
is this fabric in different blues and greens that blends throughout on the floor, on the walls, all of it, including one moment that I won't spoil, but it is sort of an impactful moment of feeling like a wave is crashing, that is unexpected. So that was definitely the intention was to make it feel like you are also alone on the river with her, and I think hopefully we accomplished that. But I do think it lends to that sense of, I was gonna say like feeling alone, but I think it's less that and more that we're small and the world is big. So the
Well
audience is
said.
right there with
Well said.
us, but I
Yeah.
think it's that sense of being the small fish in this huge pond.
But also that line, which is we're all in the same boat.
And we are.
I mean, that is an awesome way to bring the audiences right into it. Like this is such a intimate story, and you've staged it where you know having the audience right there with you, Diane, has to be it's like a special kind of bond between the audience and you as the actor and you as in your character of Annie in that show.
Yes. And I speak directly to them. um,
Okay.
almost all the time. Not, of course, when we're doing the flashback scenes, I'm not breaking the fourth wall at all during that. But much of the time I'm speaking directly to everyone, and it's a thrust stage. So I'm sharing with everyone. Um, and I look at it sort of as they are do you remember that Tom Hanks movie? What was it called? Where he's
Is
stranded
volleyball.
where yeah,
Castaway.
That's right.
Castaway. Yeah, and I can't remember what the name of his volleyball was.
Wilson.
Okay, so I look at the audience as a whole bunch of Wilsons.
Okay.
Oh,
They're kind of they're the therapeutic modality for
yeah, they're
exploring
my
what's going
imaginary
on.
friends, and I have some things that I have to get off my chest, and this is how I purge myself, basically.
With a show like this that is so largely, it sounds like there's a lot of like monologuing almost. How
Very.
do you as an actor like what does that pose like a challenge to be just like you're monologuing for an hour or like how is that for you? What does that feel like?
I've done a lot of shows like this myself,
Okay,
but it's scary. I'll tell you, Brian, it's just scary because much of the time you are alone. I did Wit earlier in my career, maybe. I don't know if you know that. It's a Pulitzer Prize winning play that comes off like a one woman show, but there are, I think, four other actors in it that did scenes with me. And I was one of the first performances that we did. I was being wheeled across on a gurney, and I was like, "What am I going to say next? What am I saying next? What am I saying next? What is it?" And then as soon as I got put in place, it just came out, luckily. But there are moments of panic that can happen, but I'm beyond that now in Kayak. I'm where that would not happen to me, but it was a lot of work. I'll just tell you this. My husband is really good at um, helping me with my lines, and he's a stickler. And so I started, as soon as I closed the last show I was in, which was at Detroit Public Theater, I didn't want to start learning the lines until I was done with that show. That was
sure,
Here There Are Blueberries. And so I finished that and immediately started memorizing this. And when you're older, you really have to get the lines into the recesses of your brain. They
sure,
have to, it's almost like you're putting them into long-term storage until you're done with it, and then you can get rid of it. But yeah, no, it's the end of the show. I don't know how long that last monologue is, Bree, but I think it
It's pretty
15
long,
minutes?
probably
It
about 50 minutes.
Yeah,
that's
15
intense.
at the end. It's my favorite part of the show, though.
Okay,
Um, and I look forward to it. So,
that's I mean it's awesome though that like that when you finally nail that piece and it just feels right, and
yes.
that's the beauty of that scene.
Yes, so true. But the other lovely thing about this show is, like I said, it's interspersed with scenes. So I'm going from all my distress in the kayak after being in there for 6 days, and then I get to be upright and talking to my son or to his girlfriend, and it just adds so much interest to the audience. Because I remember the first one person show I went to see. It was Hal Holbrook, and I fell asleep. It was boring. So kayak is not boring at all, and the extra big plus of it is it's only an hour and 5 minutes long. So
Sure, sure.
I
Was
call it
that
a really good motivational sales thing.
was that for his Mark Twain show?
Yep.
It just toured here recently, and so I saw it, yeah. And I think it can be a challenge when it's just one person up there, and,
Yeah.
like, I think that, Brie, it makes me wonder, like, how do you keep the momentum of a show like that going? Because I think Diane's right, sometimes it can if it's not done right, it can be kind of, monotone, and it could be
Yeah.
very like, you can get lost in that.
Definitely. The pacing was the biggest thing for us to figure out, and it was the moments that once we were and I'm very lucky, these actors came in very well off book, so we were really able to, like, dive in and really get our hands in there really early on in the process, which helped us tremendously. But the pacing was definitely the thing that we had to figure out because if the beginning, you don't hook them right in the beginning, they're not gonna care. And by the end of the show, Annie will have sucked you back in, but you lose them in the middle there. So we really had to figure out, especially while we're setting up these conventions of memories and other moments that maybe are quite not quite memories, but more in her head, how you figure out how to keep the momentum even though it's changing, but keep that pacing and that energy up the whole time. And I think that was a challenge for a little bit, but really once it clicked, we snapped along.
It's well
And so
written.
much of it was
It's just super
it's
well
well
written.
written.
Yeah.
And as soon as like everyone, I think it clicked that we were listening and responding and really like hanging on each other's words. we were smooth sailing from there. And it does clip along, I will say. It's an hour 5, but it feels a little bit like you could take a breath at the beginning and not let it out until the end, and you'd be okay.
Yeah, I did have a friend who said she did not breathe in the last 15 minutes of the play. There's a lot
Uh,
going on.
That's awesome though that like it can suck you in so easily
Yeah,
because you found the different pieces of like how do you bring any story to life when there's not necessarily like there's not necessarily a lot going on, but there's a lot going on, like
Yeah.
psychologically and emotionally and with monologues and stuff like that.
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
So just one final question for the both of you. And Brie, I'll start with you. Just what themes from the show really seem to resonate with you the most?
It's a good question, and a lot of things have gone in my head throughout this. I think the 2 biggest ones for me are connection to our planet, to our humans, to each other, I think is the biggest thing with this show, and then just for me, it's the action and the desire to take action and to do better for again, for ourselves and to foster those connections. Um, I think it's so important in this show and in so many other shows and in our lives, more generally speaking, to have strong connections with each other, strong connections to where we live, this pale blue dot that we're on. And we have to work actively to protect both of those things, especially I think in 2026, it would be fair to say that it is a hard time to feel those connections and not feel like the despair is setting in. But the
Yeah.
stronger we can have those connections and we can really sit down and say, we want better. We want to do better. How do we do that? And how do we connect and make it happen? So I think those are my biggest themes would be that connecting with each other and connecting with our planet.
Such a beautiful answer. And Diane, how about for you?
Um, I could never top what Bree says. Bree is just so well spoken. The thing I will say about me personally, um, beyond everything that Bree said, is the theme of love. And that may sound corny, but I have children and I have grandchildren, and the thought of losing anyone dear in my life is just mm, just unthinkable. And I know that everybody in it's just love. I'll just leave it at that.
Which is also just beautiful too. That's what we need right now too. It's just a lot of
Yep.
love
Yeah,
and to care for each other.
and understanding.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for both of you being here today. It's been such an honor to talk to you and to talk about this production.
Wow, you're so good at what you do too.
You are. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
So Kayak runs at Theater Nova through February 22nd. So get your tickets now. We'll see you at the show.